Something I feel has gotten kind of hard to talk about in the last couple of years is the Star Wars fandom. Well, look, guys, regardless of how you feel about the new movies or the old stuff or the EU or the new EU or the old EU, I love the original Star Wars extended universe. So I want to talk to you about that today, starting with the new Jedi Order. Let's take a look. Life is more a matter of choosing than knowing. He could never know the eventual destination of his path, but he could always choose in which direction to take each step. When you always know what is right, where is the freedom? No one chooses the wrong. Uncertainty sets you free. Pain is itself a god, the taskmaster of life. Pain cracks the whip and all that lives will move. To live is to be a slave to pain. Suffering is the fuel in the engine of civilization. No lesson is truly learned until it has been purchased with pain. I came to fight a war, not play political games. There are some among the Jedi that view strength as how far you can move something or how easily you can break something. The real strength of a Jedi comes from within, from his heart and his mind. Some Jedi move rocks just to prove that they can move them, but the strongest Jedi don't see any reason to move rocks when that isn't going to solve the immediate problem. Lots of things about the Yuuzhan Vong made sense to him now. If the world is full of violence, savagery, and torture, this must be how they want it. A wise leader always tries to give orders that are likely to be followed, but there's a difference between finding trouble in your path and going out of your way searching for it. Leave it to a Jedi to take on the impossible. Greetings, Exalted Ones. I am Mike, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Star Wars Extended Universe, aka the EU, aka Legends. And it all started in 1999 with a little book called Vector Prime. I feel like this is a book that's kind of somewhat legendary among the Star Wars fans now for a key character death. But we're not going to get too much into that, guys. There is going to be no spoilers in this video. All of my Why You Should Read videos are really just trying to get more people interested in a series or an author. It's kind of a weak sales job because I'm not a salesperson, but it's really just why I enjoyed it and why I think that you would probably enjoy it as well. There will be extremely light spoilers about things that happen between the original Star Wars trilogy of movies and these, and by that I mean very light, as in like this character has kids now and these characters are married now. That might be about it. So if you haven't read any of this stuff and you think that might be too much of a spoiler for you, I mean, it's pretty telegraphed from go. If you watched the original movie, I'm pretty sure you knew two characters were ending up together and having children, so I don't consider that much of a spoiler, but I wanted to let you know beforehand. That'll be it. There will be no real detailed spoilers about what happens in this series, The New Jedi Order. Now, I think that what you need to know first off is, the question I get the most is, where should I start with the Star Wars EU? Guys, I did a video for why you should read the Star Wars Extended Universe, and also I did one on why you should read the Thrawn trilogy. The Thrawn trilogy is the place that I think everyone should start, because it's all you really require is to watch A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, and you're good to go. Okay, so that's why I always say that is where you should start. If you think that that's a little too far and you want to just kind of stick to the movies, I also did a review for Shadows of the Empire. Now, with all that out of the way, I want to talk about the New Jedi Order and kind of my brief history with it before I get into the three big factors where I do what's it about, what makes it good or bad, and why you should read it. I discovered this series. Obviously, I was already back into the Star Wars EU when the Thrawn trilogy came out in the mid-90s. It brought Star Wars back from the dead for me. There hadn't been a new movie in over a decade. hadn't really thought about Star Wars. It was kind of starting to kind of fall out of my memory, really. It was just something once in a while. If I saw it on TV or something, I'd leave it. But it wasn't really a part of my permanent lifestyle by that point. And when the Thrawn trilogy came out, it brought everything roaring back. The EU was up and alive and running. It was continuing. But you know what? By the late 90s, I felt like it was already running out of gas. We were just continuing to go back to the Empire. Really, if it wasn't Timothy Zahn, it was just okay. There was some good stuff in there. But again, I was sick of the Empire. I never really felt like they had a chance to win after the events of the Thrawn trilogy. So I was just kind of starting to fade in interest again. And then in 1999, they said, we're starting a new series. It's going to be the next era of Star Wars. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And they said, we're going to have a new book every 3 to 4 months. And it's going to run for 4 years. And it's going to start with Vector Prime by R.A. Salvatore, a very, very popular fantasy novelist. And so I said, all right, I tell you what, I'll give this new series a chance just because I'm so embedded into the Star Wars EU at this point. What have I got to lose? And if it's not any good, I'll go ahead and wave goodbye to it. Again, like I said, I held the Thrawn trilogy up on such a pedestal that nothing really came close. Even when he did his Hand of Thrawn duology, it didn't really hit for me as much. Felt like it just got bogged down in boring politics and things like that, which was kind of funny now because when the prequels came out, I was like, wow, this feels very familiar. Anyhow, back to this series here. Now, if you want to know, this is a 19-book series. It takes place 21 years after Return of the Jedi, or 25 years ABY, as they like to call it, which is after the Battle of Yavin. I like to tell people after the end of Return of the Jedi, in case they haven't read any of this stuff, and they're just looking for a place to kind of get in. But it is written by 12 different authors over 19 books, including R.A. Salvatore, Michael Stackpole, James Luceno, Kathy Tyers, Greg Keyes, Troy Denning, Elaine Cunningham, Aaron Alston, Matthew Stover, Walt Williams, Sean Williams, and Shane Dix. Now, the personal history of this, how I discovered this, like I said, I was already in, so I was ready to go. So that leads us to the setup here. Now, let's get into what is it about. It's, like I said, it's 21 years after Return of the Jedi, and Luke Skywalker has restored the Jedi Order for the first time since good old Order 66, right? The Galactic Empire is all but collapsed when a new enemy shows up in the galaxy, and they start killing the billions of people, and this obviously is going to raise a red flag. But this new enemy, they call themselves the Yuuzhan Vong, and they are a race of extra-galactic religious zealots. They have the ability to exist outside of the Force, which renders that ability pretty much useless against them. So the playing field is leveled already. And with the New Republic already kind of crumbling due to the petty politics and unrest, you got Luke, you got Mara Jade, you got Han, you got Leia, the whole next generation of Star Wars heroes. They have to try and hold the New Republic together while trying to simply survive against this new enemy that is more deadly and dangerous than anything that they ever experienced with the Empire. Now, that's about as non-spoiler as I can make it for you here. Just know that there is so much more than that. That's just where it starts. It goes to so many different places over the course of 19 books. But that is the setup, and that's all I'm going to give you because, again, don't want spoilers. I'll just kind of tail this into what makes it good or bad. First up, here's the thing, is I will hear so many people who never read the extended universe who say, well, the EU is bad. The EU is not bad. Is it expanded universe or extended universe? I've gotten so used to calling it the EU for so long. And then I think it was DC Comics came up with the DC Extended Universe, and I've kind of gotten those flipped at this point. So yeah, I'm just going to refer to it as the EU the rest of the way. But anyway, you hear people say so much that all these Star Wars books are just bad. People just kind of write them off like they're just tripe, just terrible. No, I think that's the new canon can fall in there, but that's an argument for another time. But these books, there are some misses in a 19-book series by 12 different authors over the course of 4 years. There's going to be some continuity errors. There's going to be some events that land and some that just don't quite hit it. But there are vastly superior moments in this story than there are weak ones. So I'm not going to listen to all that, all the Star Wars books are bad, especially from people who never read them. And most of the time, that's from people who never read them. So I'm not going to listen to all that. while I don't think that this series is perfection, it's not going to be a lean, tight story, like I said, over 19 books. If you want me to be honest, you probably could have done this in about 15 books and it would have just been perfect. There is some meandering at some points. There is some fat that probably could have been cut. But again, when you've got 12 different authors over 19 books, sometimes some things aren't going to quite line up. But for what we got with that many different minds, it's quite sensational. And I'm going to talk about why. So most of this is going to be good stuff, guys. The first thing is you get to see all of our heroes from the original trilogy just a little bit past their prime. And so this is the next phase of their lives. Something I felt got a little long in the tooth with the era right before, after the movies. And before this is I started to feel like we've been here, we've done all this. I'm not ever worried about them losing. I'm not ever worried about losing any characters. I know that the good guys, our heroes, are always going to find a way to win. And they're all going to live happily ever after. But this one is the next phase. It feels like the growth finally happened here. Luke is now a teacher instead of a pupil. Han and Leia are now parents. Lando is running a successful mining operation. It's not just more of the same for the old crew. You know, changes are coming, and they're not all for the better, and they start immediately in this book. I also think that this series is, and this is probably one of the biggest things, it's a proper passing of the torch. Something I feel that the new movies did poorly was that it treated our legacy characters like crap or like an afterthought. And I heard J.J. Abrams saying he didn't want to write Luke into that first movie because he felt like once Luke showed up, none of the other characters matter. I don't think that's the case. You can write new characters and pass the torch in a respectful way without taking the shine off of new characters. And I think this series is the roadmap for that, because you got your core characters and they're still very much at the forefront. They still matter as mentors, as teachers, and by setting an example for the younger characters. But we let the next breed kind of breathe in this series. You don't just, and it's not just the Solo kids. You got Jason, Janna, and Anakin Solo. They all have their big moments in the series, but you get the major developments for the EU only characters, like Kip Duran, like Mara Jade, like Ganner Raiso, like Karan Horn is a big time fan favorite of the EU. So you get the development that you needed for all of those characters in this series and before, but this is where they really just kind of spread their wings and they really let them be their own characters without being like, oh yeah, Luke knows this guy, so he's got a valid reason for being here. It really gives them their space to breathe and exist as important players in this universe. But the biggest thing for me is the new enemy. I was so tired of the Empire. After Vader, after Thrawn, I'm like, it's only going down from here. We're not getting better villains in this. And they just all felt the same. They all just started to feel either the same or they were just boring political leaders. It wasn't anything that was exciting anymore. It didn't have that feeling of, the frontier in outer space. I really didn't feel that anymore. And that's why I thought it was kind of starting to wane a little bit. And that's why before the series, I was thinking, okay, it might be time to say goodbye to the extended universe. But this one, the Yuuzhan Vong, this is something else. I always felt like the Empire, yeah, they were dangerous while Vader was around. Thrawn could have brought them back, but I never just felt hopeless like I did against Yuuzhan Vong, because I was never in fear of our heroes losing in those original stories. With this, I feel like our heroes they become the underdog with the quickness in this, and it's really, really fast. And there is a big display of power when these guys first show up that's like, okay, this is different. This is different. The stakes are bigger. The game has changed. And I don't know how they're going to get out of this one. That was the first time I'd felt like that, probably since The Empire Strikes Back. So you get the Yuuzhan Vong War. They're vicious, man. They're just killing billions, just straight genocide. And if you're a Star Trek fan, I know it feels weird to talk about Star Trek in a Star Wars video, because I know a lot of people still have like that rivalry. I don't. But here's a comparison I'm going to make. A lot of fans I know of Star Trek are big fans of Deep Space Nine, and namely series 4 through 7, which had the Dominion War. If you were all about the Dominion War, you're going to love the Yuuzhan Vong War because it's like that, but darker. Yes, it has such big moments, such epic space battles, so many conflicts and memorable battles that you're just going to be just in awe. It's the kind of stuff you only imagined seeing on the screen, and it's realized here, and it's good stuff. But I talked about the darkness, man. If you've always thought that Star Wars was fun, fun space adventure, but maybe a little too YA, it didn't have high stakes, and you didn't feel like it was growing along with you, this is the series for you. Because I've said before, for me, this felt like when Star Wars grew up. And it's not just because characters fall. It's not just because, I know a lot of people think that, oh, well, you just like it because it went grimdark. Yes, I'm a very big grimdark fan. I don't think this ever goes quite that far to be considered grimdark, but it has its lowest of low moments. And I feel like that's the kind of thing, the kind of depths that our heroes needed to go through, to have that chance to rally back and win the day. And with this, man, it's just the good guys don't always win, and at times you will feel that sense of hopelessness and major characters die. And I know that there's a lot of people, personal friends who bailed on the series during the new Jedi Order because characters started dying. To me, I was like, this is 25 years after Return of the Jedi, and they're facing another huge war, bigger than anything they ever saw in the movies, against an enemy that you can't even comprehend. Past their prime, some of them aren't going to make it. I thought that was realistic. It never, to me, felt cheap. It never felt cheated. It never felt like it was done for shock value. And I think the worst kept secret is the big death that happens in Vector Prime. I remember when this book came out, that was on the news. That was on the national news about the character that they killed in this first book in the series. So you probably know that one. I'm not going to mention it here. But yeah, it shocked me. And I didn't want to believe it. And a little bit of my childhood died reading that part, but I felt like it showed right off the bat, things are different. This is going to be different. Shit's going to go down. That's kind of how I felt. And yeah, it was what this series needed. It really did need that moment to feel like things are different now. I think that's about it for what makes it good or bad. And that kind of brings me over to why I think that you should read it. I've heard people tell me that they've never read the EU and they were thinking about it, but once it got decanonized, that they decided, it wasn't worth it. Well, if you're like me and you were greatly disgruntled with what Disney gave us with the sequel trilogy, you still very much consider this canon, and I personally consider the Disney Star Wars to be like Earth 2. It's fine to exist in its own space, but for me, this is how it really happened, and I wasn't like that. When they actually first canceled the EU and they said it wasn't canon anymore, I understood. I said, it's fine. I understand they don't want to be beholden to what happened in these books with the characters at the ages that they are now. They want to tell their own story. I get it. What I didn't think was that they were just going to completely scrap all of it and not pull from it at all. They did not mine the material. I mean, that's like if Kevin Feige had said, you know what, we're going to make the MCU, but we're not going to pull anything from the comics. That's just asinine to me. So I never really expected that. Another claim I've heard is that the new movies, the people that did not like them, is that it has made them lose their interest in Star Wars. I understand that. I felt really, really down after not just the movies, but after the way some of those involved treated some of the longtime fans with the accusations and the name calling and things like that. And I understood you're trying to rope in new viewers, but I don't think that you should just completely, insult the people who have carried that empire for 40 years. But again, that is what made me feel like I'm hungry for this universe again. That's what made me want to revisit this universe. So that's why last year I picked up the Thrawn trilogy and started thinking, I'm going to do this again. Obviously, that was before this channel got bigger and my schedule got going a little crazy. But these are still going to be things that I slowly rework through over the next, half dozen to a decade of years here. And so if you are really, really hungry for this universe again, that's why you should jump back in, because I feel like this is going to be what you read these, you're going to say, wow, this is what they should have done with the Disney sequel trilogy. It really feels like that. I've heard a lot of people say you should have done Legacy of the Force, something like that, because of their ages. You know what? They could have used the same storyline and just aged the characters a little bit more, and it would have been fine. I really think so. But even if you didn't want to just do a straight beat from beat, pull from this. This is incredible material that you're not pulling from. And that's been their biggest mistake. Disney owns this stuff now, and they didn't use it. And that's very frustrating to people. Yeah. The new Jedi Order, to me, it was the Marvel Cinematic Universe before the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And what I mean by that is you had one architect with an overlying vision. We got to get from here to here. And you know what? For each subsequent book, we got to get from here to here, here to here, here to here. And I got to have a new author do this, or in their case, a new director, every single movie. Tell your story as long as this happens and this happens. It's up to you what you want to fill in here. There was a new one of these books every 3 to 4 months from 1999 to 2003, and it never once to me felt like a letdown. Sure, there was some books I didn't like as much as some of the others, but you know what? It was never one of those things where like, oh God, I waited that long. You weren't waiting. It was like literally you were finishing one of these, and it was like, okay, hey, they've already announced the next one, and we know what's going to happen in it. You know, here's the plot summary. Not really the plot summary, but the plot synopsis for it. So to me, it was like 4 years of getting like your favorite TV show that wasn't on TV. You know, it just kept coming, and it was phenomenal. And I felt like that is what made the MCU so successful, was that it had an overarching vision, and it let numerous creators get it there to where it never once felt stale. So that's why I think it worked for me, and I feel like this is why it worked, because this happened in real time. 4 years, and that's how much time goes by in the universe. 21 years after Return of the Jedi to 25 years after Return of the Jedi when this series ends. But guys, look, the bottom line is you have the shocking twists, you have the brutal losses, you got more space battles and action than any science fiction novel I've ever read in my life. And I mean, you want to call this space opera, not science fiction. Okay, tomato. I still call it sci-fi, but okay, space opera. And nothing like this you've ever seen before. Even something as big as like Battlestar Galactica or Star Trek or The Expanse never has done space battles like I've seen in these books. So good. But major character arcs in this that are incredibly satisfying. I cannot talk about how satisfying some of these arcs are from book 1 to book 19. They're just terrific. And they don't always go the way that you expect. There are some serious stunners in this, and there is some heartbreak. And it isn't just because characters die. There are bad things that happen to some of these people in his books. And I just felt like it was this shot in the arm that Star Wars needed. It wasn't a carbon copy of everything we've been doing for the last few years. It changed up enough, but it never forgot what it was. I feel like those new movies have forgotten what this series is. This still feels like Star Wars, every bit the Star Wars that we grew up loving. But it did something just different enough that it felt like it moved the series forward. And it was what I needed after I felt like Star Wars was getting kind of complacent after the Timothy Zahn era, where it seemed like even he was starting to run out of some ideas. I've said before, I think Timothy Zahn is wonderful. I think besides George Lucas, maybe Dave Filoni, no one knows more about Star Wars than Timothy Zahn. So that is by no means an insult at him. I think I was just super hyped for the Thrawn duology, and it didn't really land for me. But, that was just impossible shoes to fill. That brings me to some final thoughts here. There were a couple more series after this. I mentioned the Legacy of the Force, which I read, which was really the Jason and Jana series, which was, again, the full-on, the torch had been passed. And then Fate of the Jedi, which I didn't read. I was waiting for that series that I think it was 8 or 9 books to be completed, and I was going to read it. And that was when we got the news that the EU had been canceled, and I was so heartbroken I never went and read it. Heard mixed things about it, can't say. But what I'm getting at here is, to me, this felt like the real ending of the series. Sure, there's some good stuff on Legacy of the Force, especially if you're a Boba Fett fan. But to me, this felt like the end. Book 19, The Unifying Force. I was in tears reading this because I felt like you knew it was the last time you were ever going to hang out with like your group of friends that you've known your whole life again. It was the you're going to ride or die with them. It was that kind of feeling. It felt like it was the last time you were all going to be at the same place at the same time before you all moved on and, led your own life. That's really how this felt. The Unifying Force is one of the most brilliant endings to a series I've read, and that is not hyperbole. And I mean, it's a rewarding ending and a swan song to these characters that we all fell in love with 40 years ago. And I think that you will enjoy that trip. And that, guys, is why I recommend that you read the new Jedi Order. You can find these paperbacks for like $1 or $2 at used bookstores. There's people on eBay that sell them in lots. You can get them pretty cheap on Kindle. However you want to look at it. So, I mean, this story is very accessible. For all I know, it's public domain at this point. I have no idea. I haven't looked for things like that because you can see behind me, I have all these Star Wars books. I have had all these Star Wars books. I've been collecting them since the Thrawn trilogy first came out. I never missed them. But if you're looking for the Star Wars that you knew and loved with a believable evolution, this is your series, guys. I think you're going to be quite happy with it, and you will welcome this world back with open arms. So thank you for watching, guys, and may the Force be with you.